Good morning out there. Welcome back to Metal Band Chronicles on this Monday morning. Yes, man. Well, what we're going to do here this morning, we're going to go through and rank all 12 Savatage albums. One of my favorite bands to me, one of the most underrated heavy metal bands. Yeah, of course, everybody's going to know Trans-Siberian Orchestra, but a lot of people don't know where Trans-Siberian Orchestra came from. It came from Savatage, basically. Anyways, we're not talking about Trans-Siberian Orchestra. We're going to talk about Savatage and go through and rank all 12 studio albums here on Metal Bent Chronicles. Let's just get started. Okay, coming in at number 12, obviously, this one's kind of predictable, because it would be at the bottom of everybody's list. Man, it's at the bottom of my list too, as much as I don't want it to be, but I'm talking about the 1986 album, Fight for the Rock. Yes, I only have it on cassette, one I need to get on CD. Now, this album's not as bad as what people say it is. I mean, it's definitely Savatage going in a more commercial direction at this time. That's because Atlantic Records was forcing them to go in a more commercial direction. I mean, they do cover Bad Fingers Day After Day on here. What else? You got the title track, Fight for the Rock. You got Red Light Paradise. The Edge of Midnight's probably my favorite track on here. Hide's a great track. So, you still got a couple heavier tracks, but yeah, for the most part, yeah, it's a pretty weak album, but it's not terrible by any means. I know the band hates it. John Oliva absolutely hates it. I guess I could see why, because it's not a traditional Savatage album, and it is them going in a more commercial direction. In at number 11, and this one, to me, sounds way too much like Trans-Siberian Orchestra. You could definitely tell this is Savatage kind of transforming over to Trans-Siberian Orchestra. So in at number 11, it's not a bad album either, but Wake of Magellan from 1998. I think in some countries it came out in 97. Like I said, it's not a bad album at all. There's good stuff on here. Paragons of Innocence is a killer track with John Oliva singing on it. It Turns to Me is a pretty good progressive track. I mean, The Storm's excellent. The Wake of Magellan, the title track's absolutely amazing. Blackjack Guillotine's a great track. So yeah, I mean, it's still a good album. It's not bad at all. It's just way too Trans-Siberian Orchestra-like and not Savatage-like, you know what I mean? And, you got Chris Caffrey and Al Petrelli on guitars on here, Jet Plate on drums, John Oliva returning to do some lead vocals, and Zach Stevens, and of course Johnny Lee Middleton. Yeah, Up next, again, another album I actually really enjoy. I'm talking about the 1995 album, Dead Winter Dead. Again, more like Trans-Siberian Orchestra, but there's some killer tracks on here, man. Like, this is the Time's a great track with, Zach Stevens. I Am is a killer heavy track with John Oliva, kind of returning to some of that early Savatage glory. What else? Doesn't Matter Anyway, it's a pretty good heavy track. I mean, And of course, Christmas Eve Sarajevo makes its first appearance on Dead Winter Dead, which became basically a household name for Trans-Siberian Orchestra when it was issued on Christmas Eve and Other Stories. But the original version of Christmas Eve Sarajevo is on Dead Winter Dead. I don't know if it was re-recorded. It doesn't really sound like it was. But then again, Savatage is a pretty professional band. But that album comes in at number 11. It's still a damn good album. Okay, coming in at number 10, the final Savatage album. I'm talking about Poets and Madman from 2001. The only album they did on Nuclear Blast up to this point. I mean, there was a couple live albums released by Savatage on Nuclear Blast too. But, this is a really good album. To me, this album returns to the heavier side of Savatage, more like those early albums like, Hall of the Mountain King and Gutter Ballet. I would say mainly those two albums, but it still has the progressive elements, obviously. But my God, you got killer tracks like Karmazar, There in the Silence, definitely reminds me of something off of Gutter Ballet. What else do we got on here? Drive is a heavy track. Actually, Drive kind of goes back to the, I would say maybe the Power of the Night days. It's pretty heavy. But, you got Morphine Child, which is an epic track. Yeah, man, it's still a great album, and this is the only album they did with all the guitars. So yeah, they're back to a 4-piece on this album because Zach Stevens had left at this point. Al Pitrelli went on to Megadeth. So yeah, you still have John Oliva back on lead vocals, which is something I like. Chris Caffrey on guitars. You have Jeff Plate on drums and Johnny Lee Middleton on bass. It's a pretty good album in my opinion. Okay, up next, coming in at number 9. Right? Number 9, yes. We got the 1994 album, Hand Full of Rain. First Savatage album without Chris Oliva on guitars. Of course, at the time, Chris had just passed away. And John Oliva originally was going to put this out as a solo album. And this is the only album that has Alex Skolnick of Testament on it. And he does a phenomenal job on guitars. Me, I really enjoy this album. I think it's a tremendous album. And you can definitely tell it's a tribute to Chris. I mean, there's some heavy stuff on here too, like Taunting Cobras. That's a pretty aggressive track. Changes is just a phenomenal epic with Queen-like harmonic vocals, Alone You Breathe is a very emotional track dedicated to Chris. Nothing's going on. It's a really heavy track. I mean, it's a good album, I really enjoy it. And John Oliva, I believe, played all the instruments on here except for the guitar solos. Because I believe he did all the rhythm guitars. He does the drumming on here. Yeah, it's basically a John Oliva solo album. But with the Savatage name, because the record label, I think, wanted it to be called Savatage. I don't know, at that time they were debating on keeping Savatage going because of Chris passing away, because, the year before. Anyways. Coming in at number 8, we got the final album of Chris Oliva, Edge of Thorns. First album with Zachary Stevens on vocals. John Oliva pretty much stepped down at this point. This is a very good album. The artwork's amazing. That's supposed to be Chris Oliva's wife right there in the drawing. Dawn Oliva, who sadly has passed away too. Great album. The title track, Edge of Thorns, is phenomenal. Great guitar work. What more can be said? He Carves a Stone. Kind of sounds like Jesus Saves off of the last album, Streets. You got killer tracks like Damien. Damien is heavy as fuck, man. What else do you got on here? Labyrinths is great. Just looking here. Oh, Degrees of Sanity. Degrees of Sanity is a killer heavy track too. Anyways, that comes in at Number 7, I believe. Yeah, number 7. Okay, coming in at number 6, we got the first step of Savatage really going full-on progressive metal. I mean, it kind of started, I would say, probably on Gutter Ballet to an extent. But we got this concept album about DT Jesus. Savatage Street. A rock opera from 1991. This is a great album, man. Anyways, if I'm showing the cassettes, it's because I don't have them on CD. But yeah, I got Streets right here, the rock opera. This is amazing. It's an amazing album. Tonight He Grins Again. What a killer track. You know, Agony and Ecstasy is almost a thrash metal track. You know, you got Sammy and Text, which is a really aggressive track. New York City Means Nothing. Ghost in the Ruins. I mean, come on, man. You know, you got If I Go Away. Somewhere in Time, Believe. Tremendous ballad. This is a phenomenal album. Chris Oliva is playing some amazing solos on here. John Oliva sounds great. And that would be the last album till Poets and Madman, where John Oliva does full-on lead vocals on a Savatage album. Alright. So now we're getting into the top 5. Coming in at number 5, and this is a freaking beast of an album too. The 1989 album, Gutter Ballet. Which is definitely a step in a more progressive metal direction, as opposed to the power metal that came before it. I mean, you know, you got Gutter Ballet. When the Crowds Are Gone is something, you know, you would definitely hear more of in future Savatage albums going into Trans-Siberian Orchestra, you know. Of Rage and War is just a menacing killer heavy track. Apparently, Dave Mustaine inspired that track, from my understanding. You can definitely hear it in the chorus, because the chorus is very Megadeth, Dave Mustaine-like, when he's going, "Better listen to me, you son of a bitch! Better disarm those missiles sinking in the ditch!" You know that part? You can definitely hear the Megadeth influence. But my god, you got killer tracks like She's in Love. What a killer track. You know, you got Hound, great heavy track. The Unholy, kind of a speed metal track. Mentally Yours, Forzine Shuffle, great groovy heavy track. Great guitar work by Chris Oliva again. You know, and this would be the first album to have Chris Caffrey on it. Alright, coming in at number 4. Now we're getting down to the nitty gritty. And wow, this video's turned out longer than I wanted it to. Okay, number 4. The 1985 album, Power of the Night. Man, is this good stuff. Just a straight up heavy metal album. Power of the Night. The title track, Raise Your Fist of the Metal Child. You know, you got Warriors. You know, you got Washed Out, a speed metal track. You know, Hard for Love, which I guess was a pretty controversial track at the time, where I got a parental advisory sticker put on the album. Yeah, anyways. Skull Session, that's a pretty controversial track too. I believe it's about blowjobs. Anyways, Power of the Night is a killer heavy metal album from 1985, album number 3. You know, what more could be said? Just tremendous stuff. Great production by Max Norman, who would go on to produce Megadeth. Okay, now we're down to the final 3. Okay, the 1984 EP, The Dungeons Are Calling. This is a remastered version. Actually got the original cassette version right here. Figured I'd show that. Oh my god, this might be the heaviest Savatage album and the darkest. I mean, you got the opening track, The Dungeons Are Calling, Midas Night, you know, City Beneath the Surface, which was the name of their first ever EP, when they still went under the Avatar name. You got The Whip. The Whip, a speed metal track. You know, you got Visions. Visions is a killer track. Another speed metal Motorhead sounding track. Yeah, man, just By the Grace of the Witch. Man, this is a fucking tremendous EP, man. Like I said, I think it's the heaviest Savatage release. And it was recorded at the same time when they recorded Sirens. Yeah. So it was recorded in 1983, actually, or late 82, whenever. Okay, coming in at number 2, the debut album, Sirens. Man, is this a monster of a debut. This is just Savatage playing pure, raw, heavy metal. I mean, this is a pretty heavy album, too. You know, the opening track, Sirens, with that dark, creepy intro, you know. Holocaust, another killer heavy track. I believe. Yeah, you know, just a killer track. Rage, a rip-roaring Motorhead-like speed metal track. You know, On the Run, Twisted Little Sister, Living for the Night, Scream Murder. You know, you get an early version of Out on the Streets on here, which ended up on Fight for the Rock. Yeah, man, this is a tremendous debut, and I also have, figured I'd show this as a bonus, I have it on cassette too with the original logo. Now, that's not the original album cover. The original album cover had like a blue... It had like a blue background to it with a ship on the front of it. But yeah, pretty cool. Anyways, oh man, we're at the 17-minute mark. Okay, it's obvious what's coming in at number 1. This is pretty damn predictable. I get it. But how can you not put this at number 1? And I know everybody that's done Savatage rankings has put this at number 1. I mean, hopefully the ones in the middle or you know, the build-up leading to number 1 were different enough. But obviously, Hall of the Mountain King. Scorching heavy metal right here. Savatage's power metal album, man. Oh my God, what could be said 24 hours ago, man? Rip-roaring speed metal, you know? And the very first Savatage song I ever heard back in the day. You know, you got Beyond the Doors of the Dark, which has that darkness from the Dungeons Are Calling EP on it, you know. You know, you got Legions, which kind of has a Megadeth feel to it. And you got Strange Wings, which is another tremendous track with Ann Gillan on vocals. Or not Ann Gillan, I'm sorry, Ray Gillan doing backup vocals. No relation to Ann Gillan, by the way. Yeah, Ray Gillan did a little stint with Black Sabbath. He actually sang on the Eternal Idol demos. And he would go on to sing for Badlands and unfortunately passed away because of AIDS. You know, you got Prelude to Madness, which would be re-recorded by Trans-Siberian Orchestra. Obviously, this version on here is better. Hall of the Mountain King! Probably the greatest heavy metal song of all time, to be honest. Just killer stuff. The Price You Pay, great track. White Witch, scorching speed metal track, you know. Last on a little instrumental, and you get Devastation. Just a heavy track. Yes, Hall of the Mountain King at number 1. And man, we're at the 20-minute mark almost. See, when you talk about a band you're really into, the videos just end up being longer and you don't realize it, right? Anyways, that's it for this album ranking. Keep it metal and keep it real.